So this chapter we're going to talk about understanding stress. I personally believe that everyone experiences stress in some way or another. Everything that's going on in the environment, from your alarm clock going off in the morning to driving to school and going through traffic and having people cut you off, all the way to going to work and having to deal with your boss and things like that. Those are all circumstances of stress. But even though you have these stressful environmental factors, I think it's about how your body personally deals with these stressful events that can either create positive or negative outcomes in your life. So for this chapter, we're going to talk about the definition of stress, stress and how it correlates to illness, the negative effects of stress, the physiology of stress, what is possible, and also the mind-body connection. Oftentimes when we think about stress and we hear about people talking about ways that they've improved their stress and different things that you can do or you can try to help you with stress, we think probably, oh my gosh, this is going to take me extra time out of my life. I'm going to have to do some kind of exercise. I'm going to have to do work. This is really just adding more stress to my life in general when I think about it, because it's just another thing that I have to add to my list, my to-do list. For this chapter, the book talks about stress mastery as opposed to stress management. And the difference there is that stress mastery is going to be part of the fabric of your life. This isn't going to be something that you need to add to your life. It's going to be a craft. It's going to give you more time in your day. And it's going to cultivate wisdom. It's going to make you smarter. And it's also going to increase your awareness. So when we talk about stress, basically the definition, according to the text, is stress is anything that requires an adaptive response on the part of the organism. So something happens in the environment and your body has to respond or react in some kind of way. It's an inescapable part of modern life. So we can't really just decide that we're not going to drive to work today, or we're not going to take care of that screaming baby, or we're not going to do our homework assignment. Stress is an inescapable part of our lives. A lot of people like to eat jalapenos on their nachos or salt and pepper on their eggs. There's a Canadian scientist named Hans Seal who was quoted saying that stress is the spice of life. So if you're the type of person that likes to eat habanero in your salsa or hot sauce on your tacos, then you'll probably agree that these spices can make your food taste better and taste more interesting. Eurostress is a type of stress that can be considered positive and helpful in your life, similar to pepper or spices in your food. However, there is a pepper called the Trinidad Marugo Scorpion, which is 240 times more spicy than a jalapeno. Its name alone could cause a lot of people to question putting it in their mouths, and it's been identified by some people as the spiciest pepper on the planet. I'm pretty sure if I took a bite of that, I would be sick for at least a few hours. Just like the Marugo Scorpion pepper, distress is a negative type of stress that can have harmful effects on your body. However, even though that scorpion pepper might be harmful to me, other people might enjoy it. So The same way what might be stressful for one person may not be stressful for another. And people need a certain amount of stress to function at their best. So next time you're taking a test or you're about to give a presentation in class and feel those little butterflies in your stomach, that's actually a good thing, as long as it doesn't debilitate you or make you sick. Um, and there's studies that have shown that people who have moderate amounts of stress or arousal while trying to complete a task actually perform better than when they don't feel those butterflies or jitters. So we basically know that just like that scorpion pepper, stress can make you sick. There is an assessment in your textbook called the Life Readjustment Scale, and it's Holmes-Ray Life Readjustment Scale. And that's basically an assessment that you can take to determine what your level of stress is. And it's actually going to be measured. And by taking this test, it'll help you predict if if you'll get ill or if you'll remain healthy. Of course, it's not 100% accurate, but it's just something to help you kind of just find out where you are and where you stand in relation to stress. So the assessment will list a few things, and you'll place a check mark next to it if it's happened to you within the last year. Stress can have endless amounts of effects on our body. Anywhere from 75 to 90% of all doctor's visits are for stress-related issues. When we feel extremely stressed, our bodies actually release hormones, and these hormones are called glucocorticoids. And these types of hormones have actually been known to weaken the immune system. And what happens when our immune systems become weak? Well, we become more susceptible to illnesses, to diseases, to bacteria, to viruses, and even cancer. This is actually an alarming realization, but it doesn't mean that stress equals cancer. Remember that short-term stress can actually help the immune system and help the body get ready to deal with illness. But chronic stress or long-term stress can eventually lead to a system breakdown. Stress can also affect our mental state. It can have a serious impact on our emotional well-being. I've seen many clients who come into the office telling me that their children are anxious. And okay, I say, okay, so let's talk to these children. When I talk to the children, many of them tell me that they have more going on in their lives than they can pretty much handle. I remember I saw an 11-year-old boy who he basically had a black belt in karate. He was on the baseball team and the basketball team, and he's working on his scuba diving license. He also had straight A's in school. And by the time he left the office, he also had a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. So stress can have consequences in the workplace and even in school. It can affect the way that your ability to concentrate in these areas. When something occurs in the environment and our bodies feel like it's in danger, it'll react with a physiological response known as the fight or flight activation. And that's basically the body getting ready for some kind of event to happen in order to protect itself. So let's say you're driving in the car and you come really close to getting in crashing into another car. A lot of times your body will go through the fight or flight activation. You'll get really nervous or anxious, and these different symptoms can occur. So when our bodies are under stress for a long period of time and we're experiencing all of those symptoms of the fight or flight activation, our bodies kind of get worn down, and we can even age quicker than we're supposed to, and prematurely, really. And basically the syndrome's called general adaptive syndrome, and that's a chronic fight or flight response that your body goes into. And there's different stages. There's the alarm reaction, the stage of resistance, and basically at the end, a stage of complete exhaustion. So if their body gets to the point of the stage of exhaustion where it's completely worn down, you haven't got any sleep, um, you haven't been able to basically restore your system, um, you can even die. Death is possible in that stage. So you heard a lot of information about how stress can negatively affect your body, but I don't want you to get too depressed over it, because there are certain things that you can do that could actually cancel that out, and create beneficial results for you. I actually want to read a story from the textbook, the Essential Elements book, to just kind of give you an example of that. Um, it's a story of Norman Cousins, who wrote about his remarkable recovery from a supposedly incurable and very painful connective tissue disease that leads to spinal deterioration and paralysis. And it's in a book called Anatomy of an Illness. Um, Cousins was a distinguished author and editor of the Saturday Review, who in the mid 1960s developed a very painful degenerative connective tissue disease called ankylosing spondylitis. He became partially paralyzed and was given only months to live. Um, he refused to buy into the gloomy predictions of his physicians, who gave him a 1 in 500 chance of recovery. So he designed a regimen of self-healing based largely on humor as a stress reducer. He checked out of the hospital and moved into a hotel room, and he took very large doses of vitamin C. And as a part of his regimen, he spent several hours daily watching slapstick comedies. Initially, he reported that the 10 minutes of belly laughter had a powerful anesthetic effect, allowing him to sleep at least 2 hours without painkillers. Laughter also reduced his inflammation, probably by stimulating the release of endorphins. And slowly he regained the use of his limbs, and his condition steadily improved over several months. Gradually, he resumed his busy life, and ultimately, much to the surprise of his physicians, he went into a complete remission. He returned to his full-time work as the editor of the magazine and wrote the book to tell the story of his recuperation. So clearly, the power of optimism in promoting healing was at work in his case. Placebos have been known to help individuals with numerous issues and problems. A placebo effect is basically what happens when a person takes a medication or anything that he or she perceives will help, even though that medication actually has no proven therapeutic effect for his or her particular condition. And there's a study that they did on individuals who were having trouble falling asleep at night and staying asleep at night, and they gave these individuals, some of them got a placebo or a sugar pill, and then other people got some kind of sleeping pill, actual sleeping pill. And what they found was when they asked the people They gave them the pill, and then they told them to come back the next day. And the next day, when they talked to the same people, they found that the people who had the sugar pills actually fell asleep, slept completely fine throughout the entire night, and were asking for more of the sugar pill, even though, and they didn't know that it was a sugar pill. They thought it was an actual sleeping pill. So it was kind of their power of believing that it was a sleeping pill that helped them fall asleep. And there's hundreds of studies that have extensively researched the placebo effect in humans. Conditions that have proven to be responsive to placebo treatment include things like migraines, allergies, fever, cold, nausea, ulcers, depression, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, cancer. The list is endless. And I wanted to just read this story that I got from an online source about. It's called A Woman Who Died of Abbreviation. Beware how you interpret things. The power of the mind is phenomenal in how it can create our reality. This story is taken from The Placebo Response by Howard Brody, a medical doctor. Dr. Lon was working under a distinguished cardiologist who was taking care of a woman with a non-threatening heart valve condition called tricuspid stenosis. She also had a mild case of congestive heart failure, which was under control with medication. At the time of the precipitating event, Mrs. S was in the hospital to have some tests done and was in stable condition. One day, the senior cardiologist came into her room accompanied by residents and medical students. As was customary in those days, the group talked amongst themselves, treating the patient as if she were an object, paying no direct attention to her and excluding her from the conversation. Before everyone walked out of the door, the senior physician announced that this woman has T.S., employing abbreviation cardiologists use for tricuspid stenosis. Dr. Lon came back to see Miss S. Shortly thereafter and was stunned to find her anxious, frightened, and breathing rapidly. Her lungs, which were perfectly clear a couple of hours before, now displayed the moist, crackling noises which portended a worsening of the congestive heart failure. When Dr. Lon asked Miss S what was the matter, she replied, "That doctor said I was going to die for sure." Dr. Lon couldn't believe what he was hearing and protested that his supervisor couldn't possibly have made such a statement. "I heard him. He said I had T.S. That means I have a terminal situation. You doctors never tell the truth. You always try to soften the blow, but I know what he meant." Lon's insistence that by T.S. his supervisor meant tricuspid stenosis, not terminal situation, but it had no effect. She quietly reiterated that she knew perfectly well what was going on, and that Dr. Lon was now trying to hide her from the awful truth. After the incident, she continued to slide into worse and worse heart failure, despite the total lack of objective evidence that anything fundamental had changed in her heart condition, and she died later that same day. So the healing power of the mind can also be an ally in healing. And the power of belief can kind of change how our body reacts to a certain situation. When we change our mind, we're actually changing our body's chemistry sometimes. Vividly picture biting into a ripe, juicy lemon for a few seconds, and your mouth will begin to water. If you think of an old grudge or something like that, you might begin to get agitated or angry. First in your mind when you're thinking about it, but then it'll occur in your body. And think about something that makes you feel happy or hopeful, and you'll begin to feel lighter. There's an individual named Edgar Cayce who stated the mind is the builder, physical is the result. The study of the relationship between stress in our immune system and health outcomes is called psychoneuroimmunology. Um, so there are actually alternatives to stress reactions. We have the fight or flight activation, and then there's the withdrawal response, and that's basically removing yourself from the situation. And then there's a response called tend and befriend. And a lot of times you'll find that women tend to react to stress by using that reaction, tend and befriend, and then men will tend to use the withdrawal response. So if you're if you ever witness, let's say, a married couple get into an argument, a lot of times you might notice that the woman will want to continue talking and talk out whatever the argument is about, and then the man might want to actually just be alone and in his room and not mention anything about the argument anymore. And those are some different ways to react to stress. And research does indicate that stress inhibits immune functioning and increases the likelihood of contracting an illness.